Find that they look at the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
All right, welcome back and thanks for staying with us. If you're just joining us, you're watching Daybreak on Trust TV, and it's now time for us to review the papers at this time. We'll start with Daily Trust newspaper. We'll take a look at what stories are on the front page. We have the lead story on Orosanye report saying despite white paper, asked agencies get 226 billion naira in 2023 budget. And you have an infograph of the timeline of the Orosanye report from August 2011 to 2022 and the 2023 budgetary provisions for contentious agencies. We also have more stories at the top of the page there. Knocks trail closure of broadcast stations by Zamfara government. We also have Tinubu meets northern leaders today. Kwankwaso shuns dialogue over secret endorsements. Details on page 46. 25 persons killed in Bauchi, Kaduna road crashes. You can find details of that on page 6. Nigeria's flawed death toll hit 603 as 2.5 million affected. We also have Oyeyinka sworn in as Ekiti governor. APC PDP clash over Atiku's comment on Tinubu, Obi's chances in North. And Jaiz Bank new MD Sarajo assumes duty. And these are some of the stories that you can find on Daily Trust newspaper.
We'll move on straight to the Blueprint newspaper this morning, and we have as the major headline, 2023 presidency, Tinubu Atiku in war of words over Northerners don't need Yoruba Igbos comment. The writers there read, resort to ethnic card dangerous. Won't save you from defeat, Ohanaeze Ononuga. He cannot speak for the North, Fani Kayode. Atiku explains statement, says APC's candidate threats to national cohesion, not me. Ex-VP. You'll find the details of the story on pages 6 and 8. And we have other big stories there on the front page. Flood, 603 die, over 2.5 million affected nationwide. FG direct evacuation of Anambra, Delta, Cross River, Rivers, and Bayelsa communities. Diri urges declaration of emergency in Bayelsa. Earlier this morning, I was discussing with Dashan over the devastating effects of the flood across this country. And sometimes the moment the weather changes and it starts raining, my heart begins to skip because it will continue to add to the volume of water, and that will continue to impact areas that are prone to flood. Another story is on the front page, 3,800 Kogi teachers failed recruitment test. Wow. Female undergraduate pregnant women arrested with illicit drugs in Lagos. Nine Ghanaians back 72-year jail term for smuggling. And another stories there, we have gunmen kidnapped another ex-Anambra lawmaker at security checkpoint. 2023 NGE conference held in Owerri November 9 to examine political landscape. And we have other stories there. Emefiele, Alawuba, others to lead discourse at UBA US conference. And Kaduna, the ill-fated media war. Okay, we have other stories there from the media. APC PDP clash, IPI kick as Zamfara shuts media station. These are the major stories on the front page of the Blueprint newspaper.
All right, up next is the Punch newspaper, and at the top of the page there, you have greed collapses 98 times under Buhari amid 1.52 trillion naira bailout. You also have Buhari budgets 248 billion naira for Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, others. On education, ASU, varsities held emergency meetings on resumption, and we also have just beside the nameplate there, CBN eyes 7,740 agents to drive e-Naira adoption. Federal government reopens Dangote cement parties to continue talks. And then the lead story still talks about fresh trouble hits Atiku over anti-Yoruba and Igbo comment. And the writers say Tinubu Obi camps, NNPP lambasts ex-VP over incendiary statement. PDP candidates likely breached Section 97 of Electoral Act, fine may apply. And Atiku campaigns in Kaduna, Tinubu meets Northern Coalition, APC misleading Nigerians. And we also have more stories. Oyebanji freezes equity accounts, warn banks. Lagos female driver kills pregnant woman, 2 passengers. These are some of the stories on the Punch newspaper.
We move on now to the Guardian newspaper. The Guardian newspaper this morning have as the major headline, Nigeria's hunger levels serious, ranks 103 out of 121 countries. We have other riders there. 4 in 10 Nigerians live below $2 daily. UN chief, CDD, tax leaders on bending worsening poverty curve. Guterres, let us consign poverty to the pages of history. Make poverty reduction key campaign issue. PWD urges Nigeria. And the National Human Rights Commission, food crisis has worsened hunger in Nigeria. You have there also front page of a photograph of the Kaduna State governor and the candidate of the APC in the forthcoming general election at the inspection of a plant in Kaduna. And we have other major headlines there. Again, Rivers rank first in fiscal performance. This is according to budget. The 2 other stories there, we have premium on parallel market exceeds 300 naira per dollar. That's the free fall, talking about the free fall of the naira against the dollar. And flooding to impact property demand and value in 18 states. You want the details of that, you look up page 19 of the Guardian newspaper. And you also have there photographs of some of the insertions that were made on the pipelines from excavers carrying crude from oil wells to the Atlantic Ocean. These are the major offerings on the front page of the Guardian newspaper.
All right, let's move on to The Nation. Next, we have the lead story that says, outrage over Atiku's don't vote for Yoruba Igbo remark. Okay. And we have a writer that says, Ohaneze, Mogalu, others knock PDP presidential candidate. We also have at the top of the page, Telkom's active voice subscribers hits 206.4 million. We have Lagos leads with 753 billion naira IGR collection. FCT follows with 131.92 billion naira. We also have Tinubu to interact with northern leaders today on page 28. Forex crisis worsens as naira reserves drop to lowest level. There's still more stories on the front page. Police rescue abducted ASP in Kwara. 11 held for plotting violent clash in Ogun State. Rivers ranks first in fiscal performance budget. Federal government plans special fund for flood victims as 603 lose lives to disaster. And these are some of the stories on The Nation newspaper.
And we move on to This Day newspaper. We have as the major headline, Atiku, Nigeria doesn't need leader who will move her from rotten to bad situation. Interesting quote there from the former vice president. Says Tinubu represent the greatest threat to national cohesion, democratic norms. APC, your statement in Kaduna irresponsible. We are undeterred by plots to disrupt our program, PDP declares. Holds presidential rally in Kaduna today. Tambuwal urges door-to-door campaign as ruling party mobilizes in Anambra. Tinubu to interact with northern leaders today. You'll find this and many more on page 6 of This Day newspaper. Kwankwaso, I won't participate in Ariwa interactive session, and that's on page 67. You also have the photograph of the Zenith Bank MD. They are the Global Finance World Best Bank Award 2022 in Washington, D.C. How personal income tax can solve Nigeria's revenue challenge. You'll find the details of that on page 64. In pacts with Enugu electorate, Mba pledges to deliver quality people-focused governance. Vows to move state from 4.4 billion GDP to 30 billion in 8 years. Promises to create 100 billion venture capital for SMEs. These are the major offerings on the front page of this day newspaper.
All right, with that, we've come to the wrap in reeling out the stories on the front page of the national dailies this morning. And in the studio to analyze some of these stories, we have our guest already, Dr. Theophilus Abba. He's the director of Daily Trust Foundation. He's joining us to review some of these papers. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on Daybreak.
Good morning.
Again.
Thank you.
All right, so let's start with Daily Trust newspaper. We'll start with the lead story on the Orosanye report, talking about despite the white paper presented, asked agencies get 226 million naira in 2023 budget. Why do you think, the report, the Orosanye or the white paper is yet to be implemented?
Well, I think those who cast the headline were quite smart. Because they put acts in single quotation mark. Is that not? That means that they've not the Russia submitted this report in 2011, and the report was to say, okay, let's look at the agencies of government. Where are there duplication? Where are there overlapping of activities? And see how we can. So the idea was that, look, let's streamline some of these agencies. One, maybe for efficiency, maybe to ensure that, you reduce the staff who work in these agencies that mop up a lot of money from the system. But the concept of, a white paper is not conclusive. The white paper is actually a proposal. The white paper is actually saying this is what is possible, Now, so if a government passes, publishes a white paper, it doesn't mean that the decision has been taken yet. No decision has been taken yet. Because the process of realigning and reorganizing the agencies requires a whole lot. You have to go to the National Assembly, because these agencies were started by the Act of Parliament. You have to go back to the National Assembly to say repeal this, amend that, And then even the staff who have been engaged, they need to be redeployed. The fact that, the agencies have been asked in single quotation mark, does not mean that they have automatically lost their jobs. They may be needed in other areas. So it's a whole lot of work that will need to be done. And then we need to realize one fact, that most of these agencies were set up, one, because of Nigeria's commitment to some international treaties. Either treaties about climate change, treaties about water, about arms. So when you engage in some of these, when you sign some of these treaties, you now have to set up agencies of government that will implement them. Now, I think the problem we have is that maybe the implementation, of some of these treaties have not been how they ought to be. And again, some of them are government-owned agencies, or enterprises, which are supposed to be revenue generating. And if they were actually generating the kind of revenue that we expected them to have generated, we will not be complaining about even the money they mop from the system. For instance, you have a system, you have an agency of government that gets maybe 10 billion from the Federation account, and it's supposed to generate revenues and generates maybe only 10 million naira. Then it means that agency is not effective. Now, the best thing to do may not be to axe it, to look at what the problems are and say, okay, how do we stimulate the activities to be able to generate? Because I know there are several government agencies which have potential, but they've not maximized their potential. All they do, they go to the office in the morning, they sign, sign maybe attendance register. At the end of the day, maybe 12-1 they go home. At the end of the day, they get salaries. If you look at so many of if you look at the nuclear agency, what have we benefited from the nuclear agency? But the nuclear agency has a lot of potential. You understand? If you look at our river basin, commission, what have we benefited? But they have a lot of potential. If you look at several potential, most of them that we are thinking that we should scrap, they have a lot of potential. The only problem will not properly realign them to achieve this potential. And that is why I'm feeling that, the white paper is saying that a lot of money has entered into whatsoever. But I'm thinking we could still do a rethink And if government really wants to scrap them, then government has to move quickly so that it doesn't keep on dragging for over a decade.
We would be looking at more of what that front page stories are. A lot of questions about what need to be asked, what need to be degraded from full-fledged agencies, full-fledged commissions to perhaps agencies to save costs. What's important is that there are indeed overlapping responsibilities among these agencies, and we have to find ways to cut costs. Dr. Theophilus will be delving more into this nitty-gritty when we return from this short break. Please stay with us.
Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Where you find that they look like the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, it's Daybreak on Trust Television, and we have in the studio Dr. Theophilus Abba, who is giving us deep insight into the stories that made it to the front pages of the national newspapers this morning. Doctor, you said quite a number of things with regards to the cover story on the Daily Trust and why it has taken forever to be able to get these agencies off our funding list. But the questions in the mouths of some Nigerians is that, like you rightly mentioned in your opening remarks, this process started in 2011. It's the 11th or 12th year since this effort, and people would say, if it has taken us this long to practice madness, then how long would it take us? I mean, what is key is that we need to prune down some of these agencies. Why is it taking forever for this to happen?
Okay, well, if since 2011 we discovered the need, then we shouldn't have been dilly-dallying about it for so many years. So why did And unfortunately, more agencies are coming up, and more staff are being recruited. And unfortunately, if you get to many government agencies, you have a lot of redundancies. Now, my own thinking is that government needs to rein in the National Assembly to ensure that the laws that establish these agencies are amended. Because you cannot scrap an agency or accept the law that has established that agency has been amended, and then a lot of work needs to be done. Because I'm feeling that it's not. We may not necessarily sack people. You may say, okay, well, we have more than enough staff in so area. We have to move them to so areas. If these two agencies have overlapping roles, you could say, okay, they should come together, and then structure what department they should belong to and what they ought to do. Now, it shouldn't take 10 years to do this. You know, with the Orosanya report, although I've not read, the complete work, but I know that suggestions may have been made on agencies to merge. You know, like I think at the point they were talking about maybe even the anti-corruption agencies,
yes,
instead of having multiple anti-corruption agencies, you have maybe one. You know, you have EFCC, you have ICPC, you have the Code of Conduct Bureau, then you have the National Assembly doing the Fiscal Responsibility Commission, then you also have even the police, they do investigative, they play investigative.
The fraud unit, yeah.
You know, there should be a way of streamlining them. That does not mean that everybody who works with ICPC should be sacked, you know. So I'm thinking that it is time for government to sit down and say, look, let's get this thing done. You know, we're doing it in piecemeal is creating a lot of suspense. Even those who work there, their hearts are not, they might not be at rest. I mean, they will think, am I going to lose my job? Am I going to, you know, what's going to happen to me? And like I said, you know, these agencies are not useless in the real sense of it, except that their roles are not being maximized. You know, and I think that we need to think deep, you know, to ensure that, you know, we do the right thing and quickly, so that this idea of Rosinger reports being there forever, you know, will not arise.
All right, so let's take a look at the story on page 8 that talks about Knox Trail closure of broadcast stations by Zamfara government. Now, so many people and organizations have actually called, you know, the closure of these stations illegal. We have the NBC, IPI, BON, NUJ urging Matawale to reverse, you know, his action. So just share your thoughts on this.
It's quite unfortunate that we have seen this happening in Zamfara State, you know, because we operate a country which is which has agencies of government that have responsibilities. If any television station, has broadcast anything that you think is inappropriate, you have the channel. You know, you don't have to channel your grievances. You go to the NBC. You can complain to the NBC. That is number one. The other aspect of it is that you can actually state your own side of the story. You know, if what they have done is libelous, you go to court. You know, this executive, what do you call it? Fiat. You know, saying that the governor, I shot this. It doesn't happen in a democracy. You know, because you see, radio stations are there. TV and radio stations, the media, they are all there in order to fulfill Section 22 of the Nigerian Constitution, which means that they are there to hold government accountable. Now, you can't just shut down a radio station. There are other laws in Nigeria. There are other laws that you can invoke. You know, you can either go to court, you can report them to the NBC. NBC has a code, and these TV and radio stations must abide by this code. When they violate this code, there is a way the issues are handled. They may be fined. You know, they may be. Their license could even be withdrawn. But for a governor to say, "Look, I shut down this TV station," is totally unfortunate. And it's unacceptable.
Indeed. You're hearing that directly from somebody who has played at the highest level in terms of the media industry. What is even more disappointing from some quarters is the fact that the governor was a former lawmaker, so you would expect that he is very familiar with the provisions of the Constitution. But we would have guests later in the show delve deeply into this conversation. What Dr. Theophilus has given you is just the tip of the iceberg. But also looking at the crime and city pages 18 and 39 respectively of the Daily Trust, the inside pages. Now we're delving in to bring you just about everything that is interesting in the paper. You'll find a story there, mob set man ablaze in Jos. It does appear that we have become accustomed to jungle justice. Is this because they do not trust the system to deliver justice? I would like your thought on that.
Well, jungle justice is not acceptable in a democracy. Because if anyone commits a crime, we have agencies of government that are responsible. If somebody commits a crime, suspect that he has done something wrong, you drag him to the police. Then the police will carry out an investigation. And then, if necessary, he's taken to court to face charges. Now, the problem with jungle justice is that nobody will be held accountable. Because believe that it was a mob action, it was spontaneous action. You don't know who did this. You cannot identify anyone. Even if you identified him, you can't be sure. You cannot provide evidence that carried out, the act of killing. And that is very, very unfortunate. Now, the reason why we have jungle justice most times, unfortunately, is because the confidence in the police may be diminishing. Maybe Nigerians are losing confidence in the police, which is not the right thing to do. And this is because the police are very, very inadequate. The number of policemen that we have in this country, is quite below what we should have as a country. You get to some communities, you can't even find a policeman. Maybe a local government has maybe about 8 policemen, and this is a local government of about maybe 20,000 or 30,000 persons. Only 8 policemen. So when a crime is committed, there's nobody to report to. So, these people now say, okay, well, it's in our territory, we don't agree with what he has done, they decide to take the law into their hands.
Without cutting you short there, one would say that justifies the call for the creation of a state police. But when we begin to see governors wield the kind of power we see in Zamfara State, does it in any way, begin to raise doubts about the ability of states to augment the efforts of the federal government when it comes to local policing?
Well, the call for state police is because of the failure of government to even keep to its own policies. Now, Buhari came in 2015 and said from 2018, 10,000 policemen will be recruited. Now, if you recruited 10,000 policemen every year, it will multiply the number of policemen we have in the country to deal with insecurity. So I'm feeling that the important thing is to have more policemen all over the country. Because even if you establish state police, which I support, because state police will bring policing nearer to the people, which I support. Then you need to fund the state police, and the funding may need to come from the center.
That's right.
You understand? So I'm feeling that whether it is through state police or whether it is through federal government wetting the country with policemen, we need more policemen. Because in many other parts of the world, the policemen, those ecclesiastics are close to the people. So if you see any act that will disrupt peace, you can quickly call somebody, call the police, call an agent. Maybe you have intelligence all over. You can just call people and call the police officer and say, look, something is happening here. In 2 minutes, you see police vehicle arrive. But in Nigeria, if somebody, criminals will operate for 5 hours, no intervention from anyone. So we need more police, more security agencies. I think that is the summary of it. Whether it's the true state police or true federal police, we still need it.
All right, so let's have your take on a story that's on the front page. That's the lead story on almost every national daily today, talking about, Atiku's outrage over Atiku's comment on, anti-Igbo and his anti-Igbo and Yoruba comment.
Well, I think when I read that statement, and I now read the reaction, his media managers, trying to correct the statement and all this and that. You see, my worry is that, it's like the presidential candidates, think that Nigerians don't think. They feel that, if you invoke religion, you get voted. If you invoke ethnicity, you get voted. But as a country, we have a common problem. When they choose their, running mates, or when these political parties choose their candidates, what they tell us is that, the North has a voting population, so must do everything to please the North. As if, the North, Northerners don't think. Northerners don't know what is good for them. That is one of the things that worries me in this 2023 election. Everybody believes that, if I say I'm a Muslim, then they not to vote for me. If I say I'm Hausa Fulani, then they not to vote for me. But we have an existential problem. We have problem of insecurity. We're talking about hunger. One person is talking about hunger. It's not only in the south that there is hunger. It's not only in the east that there is hunger all over this country. And we are looking for a candidate, a president that can deal with this situation. We have insecurity all over the country. And we're looking for those who can deal with this problem. But what politicians are telling us that, if I get the Northerners, then I'll become president. So all I need to do is to get to Northerners, to get them to vote for me. Northerners can vote for you. I'm not saying that you are not entitled, but we should be discussing issues about how to survive as a country. At the moment, bandits are taking over sections of the country, and it's like we don't know. There's nothing we can do about it. Terrorists are occupied, saying that you don't know what to do about it. If they look at the education system, look at our industries. Our industries are not, are not as vibrant as it should be. Look at our, the forex issues. We don't have, we are not generating enough. These are the issues that we want to hear. Not about the Muslim, Hausa Fulani will vote for me, the North will vote for me. As if this would not feel what we are feeling. I don't know whether there's a separate country for the Hausa Fulani Muslim North and a separate country for the Christian South, if there's anything like that. I'm feeling that, Atiku, is experienced. Atiku is someone as the vice president. And it should go beyond this ethnic, this religious campaign. We need to discuss the real issues. Let us see seriously what they are going to do. Whether Atiku or whether it's Tinubu or whether it's Obi, what they will do to tackle our situation. There is even need to reign in Nigeria so that everybody can be united. We must be of one mind. If we are not of one mind as a country, if what we are encouraging is division, I'm going to solve the problem of the Hausa Fulani, I'm going to solve the problem of the Yoruba people. If that is what we are talking about, then you cannot have a nation.
Absolutely.
So I'm looking forward to a campaign that would emphasize national cohesion instead of division across the country.
Thank you very much for this thought. I wish rather that we had more time to delve into the nitty-gritty of the statement. But it's important that other presidential candidates are the ones condemning this statement. What it then means is that we expect them to live above board going forward. It's 4 months down the line before the presidential elections, and we cannot afford more problems. But I won't let you go until I get a quick statement, comment from you with regards to the federal government's disclosure that flood has killed 603 Nigerians so far. But what's pathetic is that the federal government is blaming the states and the local government. Your state, my state as well, and I think Dashan states are some of the worst hit. So we are all united by the calamity in this flood. But what we have seen essentially is that we are just folding our hands and waiting for the waters to recede. It doesn't appear, we don't see the kind of urgency we saw in 2012, the effort, the humanitarian effort. We just see the level of waters. What is happening to the people who have been impacted? And then we see these figures as if they are just figures. 603 from an avoidable death is something that should worry anyone, isn't it?
Well, it's what happened, this year, 2022, is that not?
Yes.
Is what could have been avoided. You remember in 2012, there was serious flood in this country.
Yes.
And after that, I think Jonathan was president, there was funds released, one to dredge the River Niger and River Benue, because the waters are, the two rivers are very shallow.
Yes.
So if it rains a little bit, it will begin to overflow. So the funds were raised to dredge, and there were controversies around the dredging of the rivers at that point. And it wasn't just to dredge. You see, this water, the excess water could be put to advantage. There was supposed to be, what do you call it, dams. Dams to be built in some of these flood-prone areas, so that you can even use the water from this dam for farming. You understand, for irrigation purpose. Now, you see, these things were part of the decisions of government to mitigate, to prevent such occurrence in future. But what did we see? The dredging was done half-heartedly, and as a reporter, we investigated. We knew that some person didn't do what they ought to do. And then when we published the report, they came telling me, Theophilus, this thing you don't understand, this one, they did it, this one. Yes. But now we have seen the consequence. It's worse than what happened in 2000.
Absolutely.
Okay, sir.
But the unfortunate thing is even that, like you mentioned, nobody is doing anything because maybe there is no money.
Okay, now sadly we actually need to, wrap up right now. Thank you so much, Dr. Theophilus Abba, for joining us on the newspaper review this morning.
Thank you very much.
All right, so that was Dr. Theophilus Abot, Director of Daily Trust Foundation. We'll take a break, and when we come back at the top of the hour, the show continues.
But in a situation where you find that a